Welcome, my friends, to the final
Hey.
session of the Hashnode Writing Bootcamp. I know it's sad, but all good things must come to an end. I am, of course, your host, Sam Sycamore, and today we've got a wonderful session for you. Better late than never. We're so glad to have our friend Katherine Peterson here. Katherine is going to be talking to us about how to build your professional network through social media. And this is a topic that I am really excited to hear about because, Katherine and I both have witnessed firsthand and through our network of friends and associates just how powerful this stuff can really be, as you'll see. And so yeah, I'm really excited for her to share. So yeah, let's get into it. Katherine, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. All right, let me go ahead and present. Let's see. One sec. All right, so hopefully, hang on, I want to open this so I can see the chat still. Cool. Okay, so hopefully you all can see that. Otherwise, let me know. I want this thing to go away. Can you guys see like this bar? That's annoying. Okay, one sec. Sorry, I was messing with stuff. Okay, we got there. All right, so I'm going to be talking to you all today about how to use social media to grow your professional network. And my keyboard decided to disconnect. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Man, this is not looking good for mechanical keyboards right now. My Bluetooth disconnected. Okay, hang on. We're gonna have to do it with the mouse. Okay, sorry about that. So I am Katherine. I'm a software engineer at GitHub, and I am at Katherine Codes on Twitter. So if any of you have seen me around on Twitter, you might know that I got my current job at GitHub because of social media directly. So it was a side project that I shared on Twitter that ended up being seen by someone at GitHub and landing me my current role there. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to talk today, I'm going to talk about my journey and the impact that social media has had on my life and my career. And then I'll talk about like what benefits you might see from growing your online presence on social media. And then I'll go ahead and give some tips on how I think you could do it. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. All right, so this is like kind of a high level overview timeline of my journey. So I was from a kind of non-traditional background. My degree was in industrial engineering, so not super related to what I'm doing now. And I graduated in 2018 with that degree. And shortly after, I got an email about a coding boot camp that was like part-time online, so I could do it on the side of the job that I had. So I decided to sign up just because I was kind of interested and I thought it looked fun and I just wanted to see what it was like. And I ended up completely loving it. And I knew that it was what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. So I finished that boot camp in September 2019. And then shortly out of boot camp, I ended up getting my first software engineering role at a startup. So this like big gap in the timeline there from September 2019 to February 2021, I was working at two different startups. So I had I knew some people from that job, but that was like pretty much as far as my professional network as far as like tech went. So I knew maybe like one or two people from college who were in software engineering. And then I knew like my manager and a couple team members uh, at the startup that I was at. But outside of that, I didn't really have like a big network in tech because I mean, obviously like the pandemic, and then also just like a lot of people I know in real life like aren't in tech. So I was pretty limited in that way. And then a big turning point for me was when I decided to join Twitter. And I wrote here join tech Twitter because I had been on Twitter for years. Like I had made an account back in high school, but it was like more of my personal account, and like most of the people who followed me were like people from high school, so they weren't necessarily interested in tech. So I would like follow a few people in tech because I was interested in what they were saying, but I kind of like felt like I was in this weird position where like I didn't want to like post or reply because the people that followed me didn't really care about that stuff. And then I just decided one day like, oh, like I see them all like talking about this fun stuff and I want to be part of it, but it feels weird. So I'm just gonna start from scratch. And I'm gonna make a brand new account, and just like it's going to be my tech account. Like I get to talk about all the stuff that I'm working on and that I enjoy. And I'm going to really start putting myself out there and not just like lurking on the Twitter timeline, but like actually posting and speaking up. And then you can see like there's tons more that's not even on this timeline, but this is like when things really started picking up, my network started growing, and like things started happening for me. And that was all from joining Twitter, from talking with people, and from sharing stuff online. So another big point on the timeline was this side project that I launched, readme.so. If you haven't seen it, it's essentially a web app where you can go choose like sections for README, and they have little pre-made templates, so you can see like get ideas for what you might put in each section, and use that to build up your README. You can edit the markdown right there on the website, and then you can copy paste it or download it and put it in your GitHub repos. And then in June this year, I got hired at GitHub. So I'm gonna go through I'm gonna share some of my tweets, some screenshots since February to kind of go over what all happened after that. So this was February 5th, like pretty shortly after I joined. Someone here like DM'd me. We started talking a little bit, and he kind of like introduced me to the Twitter world, and this was like kind of the start of it. Like he said like, oh, she's looking to connect with tech people, like say hi. And so this is when I got my first like little like 100 followers or something, and got to start interacting with people. And then I really started like wanting to create my own content. So that's when I started blogging. I joined Hashnode because I saw other people blogging and I saw what they were writing about, and I was like, oh, like I have stuff like I could have written this, or I have things that I know that might help people. And it can be like something really simple. Like you can see my very first blog post was my 12 favorite VS Code extensions. So that was like something that was really simple for me to write because I could just go in my editor and look through my extensions and be like, oh yeah, like this one's great, and just share that with people. And people like really responded to that. I was super stoked that I got 600 likes at the time. So I started sharing things like that on Twitter. And it was really fun, like seeing people's responses and them telling me their favorite extensions that I missed and stuff like that. So even just like conversations like that can be super great for meeting people. And then this was when I started to share like little coding projects that I was doing on the side of work. So even like small things like just a little SVG animation, or like I made an app with the Spotify API. And you can see like when I first started sharing my projects, it didn't get like a ton of response, but that wasn't really what it was for. It was more just like for my own sake. And it was fun to like share that with people and have conversations with people about the stuff I was working on or the stuff I was learning. And like on the middle tweet, you can see it wasn't even my own idea, but I saw someone else on Twitter like post just like a little code sandbox like JavaScript snippet for like a smooth scrolling thing. And I saw people in the comments be like, oh, like I really want this as a Chrome extension. So I DM'd her and I asked her if she was gonna do that or like if she wouldn't mind if I did. And she said like, yeah, go for it. So that was something I got to build because of that conversation I had on Twitter. And then on the right, that was when I made a programming course. I met someone named Kenneth Castle on Twitter who's building slip.so, which is like, it's an online platform for building programming courses. And I had just been talking to him in DMs a little bit too, and ended up using his platform to build a course, which was really cool. And like another thing that I got to share on Twitter. So at this point, I was basically just sharing anything I happened to be working on, like at all related to tech. And then this was a big turning point, obviously. But to me, like I didn't know that this would be the project that changed my life truly. It was just like those ones before it, where it was just something that I built for me, like an idea that I had just in my day-to-day life that I came up with. And I built it in a weekend, so it took me 2 days, and then I just like shared it on Twitter like I did everything else. And it got like a pretty decent response, and people like were saying that it was helping them, which was really cool. Someone like recommended to me that I put it on Product Hunt, so I did that like 2 days later. And then people that I had met on Twitter were asking if they could contribute to it, so I ended up open sourcing it, which was really, really cool because like some people that I had met and that I joined a Slack group with, they wanted to like be part of it, but they had never contributed to open source before. So I actually got to like hop on a Zoom with them and walk them through like the whole Git workflow of contributing to open source. And we got to like collaborate in that way and kind of pair program on my project, which was really awesome. And then, of course, just like everything, like anything you're doing in real life can be turned into content that might help other people. So I was walking people who were new to open source through the process of doing it. So I was like, this is probably something that other people want to learn how to do too. So I wrote a blog post about just like how, like, what are the steps that you would take when you want to contribute to an open source project. And I kind of explained it from the point of view of my project, which brought like even more contributors to my project. So I got to work with more people. And then this was like the most exciting day of my life. GitHub tweeted about my project and they tagged me. So I like woke up this day to so many notifications on Twitter and I was like, what is going on? And then I retweeted it, obviously like very excited. And then I don't know, like a few days after this, I got a DM on Twitter from a hiring manager at GitHub. And they were like, hey, like seems like you're really excited about GitHub. Would you be interested in working there? And he kind of sent me like the open role that he had on his team. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So I responded and went to interview there. And then this project kind of, I think the GitHub tweet like kind of made everything snowball, but like Sarah Drasner tweeted about it, which I was really excited about because she's like a huge role model of mine. It also like made it to like the top of the homepage of Hacker News. It hit 1,000 stars on GitHub. So at this point, I started getting like contacted by a lot of different companies. Like in the Hacker News comments, I got like a job opportunity in there, like on LinkedIn, on Twitter. People were reaching out to me just because of this project that I made, which was really cool. So I was like interviewing at a handful of companies at once at this point. Yeah, in this project, I started getting a lot of invitations to be on things like live streams and podcasts, just to talk about my journey and the project and stuff. And so I got to meet more people that way, like James Quick. I got to be on his live stream, and he's someone who is really, really awesome. And he's been a huge support of me, like ever since this was when we first met. But ever since then, he's like shouted me out on his podcast a bunch and stuff like that. And he's been a really awesome connection. So this is when I got to post that I accepted my offer at GitHub. and then my first day there at the bottom. And these are like some of my most like tweets of all time, which I love that. Like I love how much people on Twitter are supportive of each other. Like of course there's always like negativity sometimes online, but like the vast majority that I've experienced has been just like overwhelming positivity, which is really, really awesome. Yeah, and this is kind of a side note from like the whole job thing, but I also made like truly some amazing friends that I met on social media who are not only there for me like for coding related things or work related things, but like personal things. So these are some people that I met in a Slack group that I got invited to by someone I met on Twitter. And I've like spent hours on Zoom with these people. Which is really awesome. I think Shaquille's in this picture, which he had a talk last week, I think. And I also like met Sam from Hashnode in the same exact way. So by the way, I wanted to know, a lot of this talk is like from the perspective of Twitter, just because that's like where the social media platform that I'm on most, but like I'd love if you could all send in the chat like yes or no if you're on Twitter, just because I'm curious. Like I'm assuming a lot of people are, but like if you're not already on Twitter, okay. Awesome, I haven't seen any no's. Yeah, I'm on some other platforms too, but like especially tech for tech, that's like my main thing. Okay, cool. I love to see it. Okay, so let's talk about some benefits of growing your online presence. And I'm just going to start with the obvious one for me is job opportunities. There's my story, but there's so many others just like it. I know Sam, I met him before he started working at Hashnode, and I think this one and maybe the job he had before it, like we're all from social media essentially. We have like a Slack group with like 30 people. And I was trying to keep count the other day. There was like 8 of us that have gotten new jobs since I joined that Slack group back in March. And every single one is from like connections that we made online. I think like especially nowadays, like that's probably the number one way people find jobs because we don't have like meetups or conferences in person right now. And I don't think I've ever met anyone who got their tech job like just cold applying online. Like it's always through like a referral or someone that you met, is how people find these opportunities. Like I did, and also my fiance just got his job through someone we met on Twitter, and that's his first tech job out of a boot camp as well. So that's like a huge, huge possibility on social media. So second, I kind of already mentioned as well, but like friendship and also mentorship. So I've made like tons of really great, like truly friends online that I never would have met if I didn't make that decision in February to join Twitter and not just be on there looking, but like really talking to people and like forming those connections. But also like mentorship. Like there's a lot of these people who it's not necessarily a formal mentorship, but like informally, just like when I need help with something, like they're there to offer it, or when I need like career advice, like when I was deciding between some different job offers, like which one I should choose, like they were there with me to talk it out and offer their perspective as some of them like being people who have been in the industry much longer than me. And then there's also people who are a little bit earlier on in their career that I've met who like I can offer some mentorship. Which is a really great advantage of social media. So next is it's a great way to build your personal brand. It's probably like the number one way people build their personal brand is to like get on social media, get your face out there on different platforms, and like really become someone who's recognized throughout the industry, and that people trust. I think there was also a talk on this during the boot camp. So hopefully you guys went out and saw that. So professional opportunities, we already talked about job offers, but it's more than just that. Like I said, I got invited on podcasts, on live streams, and then like opportunities to speak at conferences. Like if I wasn't on Twitter, I wouldn't be here talking to you all right now. because it's really just because I met Sam, and since he's joined Hashnode, like I've gotten to be on Twitter Spaces and gotten to have talks like this, and I didn't know that was going to be the case when I first met Sam or when I first joined social media. But those can be more opportunities to like get your name out there, get your voice out there, get in front of more eyes that might be able to like offer you more opportunities in the future, and build your personal brand even more. It's also like a great way to practice your communication skills. Like when I first started getting asked to do stuff like this, I was like incredibly nervous, and I still get nervous every time, but each time it gets a little easier. And those are skills that like you'll carry throughout your career and that are just as important as technical skills. And then lastly, learning opportunities. So I've found like so many resources and recommendations from people on Twitter and online, like courses or books or things like that, or even just like Twitter threads of people sharing their knowledge. Like you'll meet so many people who know different things than you, and maybe you'll be able to share things too. Or even like boot camps like this. Like there's so many resources out there in different formats that you can find through social media. Also, building an audience. So being able to like grow on social media, you'll have more people listening to what you have to say, and you'll have more influence. And then if you create any sort of content, like I know a lot of people in this bootcamp probably write. So if you write blog posts, or if you create videos, podcasts, if you create courses, or any type of content, or like newsletters, things like that, it can be like really useful to have an audience already. And even if you don't make content right now, building an audience now can be useful if you ever want to make content in the future. Because unfortunately, like your content isn't worth as much if people don't see it. All right, so let's talk about how you can do it. Nice, I'm seeing some cool comments about finding a mentor through Twitter. Cool. All right, so the first point here is finding what works for you. So we've talked about it. It seems like a lot of people here are on Twitter, but you might be on other things too. But there's a lot of different ways that you can be on social media. So when I first joined, I was like a little more on the shy side. Like I wasn't ready to like be making YouTube videos and things like that. So there's different people have different personalities, and you might want to decide like, do you want to have your face out there? Do you want to be like speaking verbally, or do you want to do like short form writing like tweets, or long form writing? And that like really just varies person to person. So like you could like test out different things or try to think about what works for you. So for me, it was easiest to get started with Twitter because it was kind of like low stakes. Like I could just put out like a couple sentences just to get started. And then secondly, how much time can you commit? So just like all the platforms are kind of different, they require different levels of commitment. So something like YouTube requires like planning your content and then editing and recording it. So that's like more of a high time commitment versus something like Twitter, where I can just like share my thoughts as it happens. And even Twitter can be like more of a time commitment depending on how you go about it. So if you start like scheduling things or putting together like longer Twitter threads, like that can, if you have the time to do that, that can be good. So you can kind of figure out what works for the amount of time that you have to commit to social media. And then lastly, like where is your desired niche? It seems like we all obviously our niche is on Twitter, since every person here said they were on Twitter. But that's like a thing to consider. Like for us, it probably wouldn't work to go on Facebook because that's not where everyone else is. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But yeah, like figuring out like is your audience that you want to have, are they on Twitter? Are they on YouTube? Are they on Twitch? Like where are those people? And you probably want to put yourself in front of those people. All right, so once you join social media, what do you post? So the number one thing to me is like original content of any form. So for me, it's just sharing things that are happening in my life, sharing projects that I work on, sharing like any sort of content I create, whether that was like a blog post or a podcast appearance, like anything like that. A lot of times for me, it's just random thoughts that I have, or like, especially if it's related to tech. And secondly, like ask questions. Like that's a really easy place to start. Like I'll just ask for people's opinions or what they think about like a certain technology, things like that. Or if you're running into a problem, like putting it out there and asking for help. Like people on Twitter will respond and they'll be really helpful. And it's not just about getting the answer to your question, but it's about like those conversations that'll happen when you do that. And then I also wrote share both wins and losses. So I said before, like it's really exciting to me that my most popular tweets have been the ones where I've shared like my biggest wins, which is really awesome. But I also don't ever want to be only sharing wins and making people think that like that everything goes well for me all the time and that it's just like win after win, because that's not realistic and that's not relatable. So I also like to put it out there that like sometimes things don't go well. Like right after I joined GitHub, I was experiencing really bad imposter syndrome. So I shared that on Twitter, and like people responded and were really, really nice and supportive about that. And they shared their experiences with me, and that kind of made me feel better and made me feel less alone. So it's not, you don't have to like hide when things aren't perfect. You can share those things as well on social media. So show your unique personality. So I also post things that are like not necessarily tech related. Like I'll post pictures of my pets or like coffee, things like that, like things that I'm interested in. And those have actually been ways that I've met people who have responded to those who have those same interests as me. And then once you have like that interest and tech in common with someone, that can be like a really strong relationship. And also it just makes you like more real as a human, which is nice. Like it's nice to not just be an account that like posts like robotic tips or like things like that. Like being a person as well can be really nice on social media. So lastly, it's not just creating your own posts, but also engaging with other people's posts. And that's like arguably equally as important as posting your own content, because you want people engaging with your content. So like engaging with theirs back is a good thing to do. It's also like some of the best ways that I've made connections with people, because you'll like comment on their posts and they'll comment on yours. And those are like a lot of the strongest connections that I've built, is like mutual followers who like you start recognizing them because they show up in your replies and you reply to their stuff. And then you kind of build this bond and you feel like you know each other. All right, so how can you make connections? So the first point here is become interested in other people. So there's this quote from Dale Carnegie from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it basically says you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years of trying to get people to be interested in you. So you can like be on social media and try really, really hard to like be cool or be successful and have all these people like become interested in you, but like people will like you better if you are interested in them, because other people care a lot more about themselves than they do about you. So asking them questions or replying to their posts about themselves like is a better way to make friends than trying to like make them think that you're really awesome. And then next, quality over quantity. So what I'm talking about there is I think it's better to optimize for fewer real like strong relationships than like number of followers or something like that. Because I have like X number of followers, but there's a certain subset of those that like really interact with me and that I really would be able to like consider part of my network, and people who would be there for me in the future. And I'd rather have more quality of relationships than like however many number of followers. So I think that's a better thing to optimize for. Next, don't be transactional. So I'll get people in my DMs just like asking me for a favor or something like that, like right off the bat, or trying to sell me something, which is not the most effective way to grow your network. Like you wouldn't walk up to someone in person and just like immediately ask them for a favor when you don't know them, like without saying hi or like making any sort of small talk. So like really, you want to like cultivate these relationships just like you would with an in-person relationship, not just like making online transactions with people because you can't see them face to face. Like there's still people and you can still talk to them, just like you would in a real like in-person relationship. That said, like don't just send messages that just say like hi or something like that, because online people don't know what you're going to say, or if they respond if you're going to immediately ask for something. So a lot of times people won't respond to that. So like just be friendly, but also make sure that you get to your point, like, or kind of like say right there in the first message what you're like asking for or something like that. Because if you just send hi, at least I don't respond to those because I have no idea what you're going to say next, which can be a little scary. Next is offer help. So I think the key thing here is to offer help when you can or when you see those opportunities without expecting anything in return. So I've helped people that I've met on Twitter, or in these groups that I've joined, without expecting anything in return. And that has come back to me from in different ways, like from other people. And you also never know when like in the future that person might be able to help you. And then the last point here is connect with people of all levels. I think it's easy to like go on social media and see like the person who is where you want to be, or who is your role model in your industry, and like want to reach out to them and want to get them to talk to you because they're like who you're aspiring to be, or they have some sort of power or influence. But I think it's more important to connect with people like at your same level or even earlier on, because those people are going to be able to relate to you more. They're more likely to respond to you. And also like as you progress in your career, that those people in your network will progress with you. So those people will be like really valuable connections in your network later on. Just like I said, like people like Sam and stuff that like we all met before we got the jobs we're in now or something. And we all leveled up together, and now like I've referred a few of them to GitHub and things like that. So like as you progress, your network will progress around you. And then my last recommendation here is just to enjoy it. It's really, really easy for things like social media to become a chore, especially like if you do it in a way that doesn't work for you. Like you forced yourself to write a blog post every week, when that's not sustainable for you, or you start like listening to negative comments online. And it can be hard, but like you just have to be compassionate with yourself, like take breaks when you need it, and kind of check in with yourself on like, why am I doing this and is it working for me? But I just try to always enjoy it. Like I don't take it too seriously. I just share what's like real for me in the moment, and don't like try to be someone that I'm not online. Yeah, that is all I've got. So I would love to take questions if you all have any.
Let's do it. Awesome. That was great. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, someone commented about my dog. Yes. Yeah, she turned 1 and I made her wear a stupid looking hat. It was great.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It's too cute. Cool. All right. Yeah, let's get some questions from the audience here. This is the most upvoted currently. We'll go ahead and bring it up on stage. From our friend Avnish, who asks, how do you grow your Twitter? How do you stay more active?
Yeah, I think staying active is definitely the number one thing I would say. I've seen a lot of courses out there about like how to grow your Twitter audience, which maybe I could recommend a few. I think that those can be helpful, but like before you get to all those tips or like things like when to post and how much to post and stuff like that, like the number one thing would be to be consistent and be active. Like just be there, be on there every day, and just try to respond to people more than anything. Like I don't really plan my posts. Mine are more like spontaneous, I guess. Like when I'm doing something that's worth posting or when I have a thought. But the bigger thing is responding and engaging with other people. So if you're on there every day and talking to people, like it'll come. It just takes time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. One of the things that I've noticed with Twitter is that it definitely punishes you if you're not consistent. And
Yeah,
so, as frustrating as it may be, I mean, I'm definitely a lot less active on the weekends. I try to avoid social media for the most part on the weekends, but um, yeah, just like showing up every day definitely plays to your favor, just in terms of like how the platform works. But yeah, I would echo your point that you know consistency, but then also it's like be a person first and foremost. I see a lot of people, especially like people who are really trying to like build an audience or intentional about like trying to grow a presence, who are like they're like looking into like how do I optimize, like you said, like what time of day, how many times should I post. It's like be a person first, and the audience will naturally follow. That's been my experience anyway.
I totally agree. And when I like look at someone's Twitter account, if it is like super robotic looking where it's like okay they like post 3 times a day and then they retweet their own tweets and they never say anything that like makes them seem human, like that's not an account that I follow. It might be different for other people, but like if you're just but then on that same note, if I look at an account and they haven't posted in like 3 weeks, I'm like like is it worth following another person to like probably never see their tweets, because when they do tweet once a month, the chances that I see that are so low. So if you're not active, like people aren't necessarily going to follow you either. So there's some sort of balance, I think, but I think being regularly on there and being active is good enough, and you don't necessarily have to think about it too much more than that.
Right on. Thanks for that question, Avnish. Here's one from Alexander, who asks, I'm interested in your imposter syndrome coping mechanism as you started at GitHub. Do you have any tips for someone just going into their first development job?
Yeah, I would say like no, first off, that it's very, very normal and it's not just in your first development job. Like this was my third, I guess, at this point, and it was probably the worst imposter syndrome that I've experienced so far. So it's super normal. And that was what I learned from the comments on my tweet about that too, was like literally everyone goes through it. Like people that I look up to and would think like would never feel that way, feel it. Um, Coping mechanism, honestly, like once just like being kind to myself about it and being like, this is normal. I'm in a completely new company with like a way bigger code base than I've ever worked on, working in like a language that I'm not as comfortable in. Um, I don't know, just like going easy on myself. I was lucky to be surrounded by like a really awesome team, and my manager my manager saw my tweet about it and she was like, "Go easy on yourself. Like it's totally normal. Like you're still ramping up. No one's expecting you to be productive on your first day." And I think that I realized I was expecting to go in and be as productive as I was in my previous job, like on day one. Um, and that's just not realistic. Like people understand if you're going into your first developer job, or even not your first, but you're starting a new job, you are not going to be like 100% effective on your first day. So like the company's not expecting to like get their money back from you on their first day or anything like that. Like everyone knows that there's a learning curve, there's a ramp up period, and that's totally okay and totally normal.
Right on. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for the question, Alexander. Pull up another one here. This is the next one from our friend Akash in Gurgaon, India. Asks, how many hours on average should someone spend on Twitter?
I don't think that there is a good general rule for that at all. I don't spend very long on there, to be honest. I don't know, maybe my screen time on my phone would tell me differently, but I usually when I go on there, it's like to tweet something, like I thought of something and I want to tweet something. And then when I'll go on there, I'll go on for like 10, 15 minutes and just like respond to things that I see on there. But I try not to spend too many hours on there. I think it's great to keep in mind that like it is social media. It is like it can be detrimental to your health and your life if you're neglecting other things for it. So like keep your priorities in check, I guess. Like remember things outside of social media that matter. Um, but how many hours on average? I don't think there's a general rule for that, and it depends. Like if you're doing Twitter Spaces or something, you're going to be in there for longer because those take some time. But I wouldn't spend all day scrolling. I don't know. Sam, do you have a better answer for this?
I was thinking back, like when when I first started taking Twitter seriously as like a networking tool. I was working full time in an unrelated job, non-tech stuff, still learning to code, and I had about like 2 or 3 hours a day of just like free time that I could commit to, this career change of mine. And so I started making a priority that, for every like if I was going to spend 2 hours working on stuff in any given day, I would devote at least 30 minutes to just like being on Twitter and like interacting with people. So yeah, I think it's less about, I would consider less from the perspective like how many hours should I be there, but like what like portion of my time am I willing and able to devote to this thing? And just treating it like a job duty more so than just like, oh, I'm just going to go kill time for an hour.
Yeah. I actually think too that like it's not necessarily there would be too much where like if it's 100% of your time, then you're not like doing enough stuff outside of Twitter to have stuff to tweet about that's valuable to other people. Like I remember a friend of mine told me like he like looked at my Twitter stats and was like, you're not tweeting enough. Like look how few tweets you have. And I was like, yeah, but like I spend that time like building something like coding, which is something that I enjoy, and then I share it on Twitter. Like, and I think like a great way to become someone who's interesting for people to follow is to like do cool things outside of Twitter and then share that on Twitter. Because if you're just someone who's on Twitter all the time, like that, and that's all you're doing, you're not that interesting of a person for people to follow as someone who's doing really, really cool things and then shares it along the way on Twitter. So like make sure you're also spending your time learning and then sharing what you learned, or building and sharing what you built, or creating content and sharing what you built. So there should definitely be a balance. And I think there's too little and too much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It actually got me thinking about something else. Like when I started to really gain a lot of traction on Twitter was when I was doing a lot of I was freelancing, and I was doing a lot of like what you might call building in public, where I was basically like, if you looked at my Twitter timeline, it looked like I was just on Twitter all day, because it'd be like every 15, 20 minutes there'd be another tweet for me. But it's like it's more like I'm live tweeting the thing that I'm working on as I'm working on it. And so like, I'm like waiting for this, Gatsby build to complete. And so I get on Twitter for 30 seconds and I'm like, oh, Gatsby is so frustrating. I hate this thing. And then, like that turns into a viral post for some reason, just because it's Twitter, yeah. So like, yeah, I wasn't necessarily spending a lot of time on Twitter, but I was like, just like posting about what I was creating as I was doing it, and that worked really well for me.
Same here. Yeah, you won't have anything to complain about on Twitter if you don't do anything else.
Very true. Cool. Thanks for that question, Akash. Um, Here's a good one related to that question from our friend Fahim, who says, how do you stay active on Twitter and actually be productive as a developer at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we just said is focus on being productive as a developer first and share your experience being a developer on Twitter as you go. And I love what you said, Sam. Like I do the same thing. Like I'll be waiting for CI to pass or something, and that's when I'll go tweet. Like just like little breaks. Like even if you're a productive developer, hopefully you take breaks fairly often. Um, so that can be a great time to be active on Twitter. Like it doesn't have to be a big nonstop chunk of your day, but like a few minutes here and there every day will go a long way.
Yeah, and I think the Pomodoro technique is really good for this also. For those who aren't familiar, it's basically a time management system where you set a timer. The standard is like 25 minutes or 30 minutes. So you set a timer and you say like, okay, I'm just going to focus on one task for the next 25 minutes. I'm not going to do anything else. And then when the timer is up, you've got a 5-minute break before you move on to your next task. And so a lot of times, what I would do also when I was really pressed for time is I do my 25 minutes of coding or studying, and then my 5-minute break I just go all in on Twitter. Like that's sort of like the carrot at the end of the stick, right? Like my reward for having like focused my time so devotedly for 25 minutes. Cool. Thanks for that
The
question,
people want
Fahim.
a blog post about your Pomodoro game, Sam.
Oh, I haven't even been looking at chat. Yeah, I should. Cool. If the people want it, I can make it happen. Cool. We still got a few more minutes here. Let's do one or two more questions. Um, let's see. Kind of already answered that. Da, da, da. This is an interesting question from our friend Oluwashina in Nigeria, who asks, what was your biggest fear when starting out?
Yeah, I know I shared that like I had a hard time speaking up on social media in the beginning. And I don't know if I can like explain what I was even scared of. Like I guess being judged or like people, yeah, like thinking negatively of me. I remember in the beginning I was like really scared that people I knew in real life were gonna like find that account for some reason because I don't know why. Like I guess people that I knew didn't even necessarily know that I had like switched careers into tech, and that I was doing this stuff. I I don't know. It felt a little weird because I had never been someone who regularly posted on social media. Um, the funny thing is I actually like a friend of mine, her her boyfriend is a software engineer, and he like one of my tweets that like got like a lot of attention showed up on his feed, so he ended up following me and telling her. And the next time I saw her, she was like, "Yeah, Gabe told me like that about your account, and he showed it to me, and you had like thousands of followers." And I was like, "No, like that's probably I don't think that's Catherine, not like that Catherine," which is funny because I guess like if you knew me in real life, it like wouldn't be my personality to be like out there on social media. Um, so I guess that was my fear. I don't know. I don't know if that explained like what the fear was. I think it's just like I don't know, like a shyness thing or a anxiety thing. But it's scary to put yourself out there. Like it feels very vulnerable because you don't know who's looking at it and like what they're thinking or if people are going to be nice. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about being afraid that people in your physical real life would find you. I sort of have the same fears when I got started on tech Twitter. It's just like I just felt so silly and just kind of embarrassed. Like I wasn't really sure that this like career transition on what I was doing was even going to pan out. And so I was like, this is just going to be so embarrassing like a month from now when I give up on all this. And then there's like a permanent record on the internet of it.
Yeah, for some reason it feels so silly. Like when I was first posting, like, oh, like first blog post, check it out. Like I don't know, like something about it, like it feels a little weird in the beginning. And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing.
Yep. Yep. And then now, of course, on the other side, my new biggest fear is that people in my personal life will discover that I'm Twitter famous. So
Exactly. It's funny like the comments that like people I know in real life, because now like most people in my, well, the whole GitHub thing, like it ended up being a thing that now I talk about it with people because they're like, because I talk to them about my job and then I tell them how I got it and they're like, you got it on Twitter? Like in real life, people are still like very surprised by that, but it's like a very common thing from the people that I've met online. But yeah, it's a different world, but it's interesting.
I love it. Cool. Thanks for that question, Oluwashina. We've got time for one more question. So let's make it a good one. Let me check through. Not to say these questions aren't all wonderful. These are all great questions, but some of them have been, repeats or already covered. So let's make sure we get a good one here. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, this is an interesting question. Okay. This comes from our friend Anne in Paris, who asks, how do you know who to connect with when you're brand new to coding?
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when I first joined Twitter, I just like followed anyone who had like something remotely related to what I was doing in their bio. Like if they said JavaScript or like React or something, they were like someone that I'd follow. So I think, I don't know, if you're brand new to coding, like what type of coding are you doing? Like what language are you in, or like what types of things do you want to build, and just finding people who are interested in the same thing. And it doesn't really matter who it is. If they're in that same space and they share that common interest with you and that's the thing that they're posting about, like it doesn't matter how many followers they have or anything like that. Like just I would try to find people who are doing what you're doing or what you want to be doing, and those are the people to connect with.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. My perspective when I was, just getting started on tech Twitter was like, I know so little about this topic that like I will accept anyone who shows up and is friendly to me. Like if you want to talk to me about this stuff, you're my new friend. That's, as much detail as I need to go into. Uh, yeah, it's funny thinking back to those like first few connections that I made. I connected with Jack Forge pretty early on in my Twitter career. I think he
I
had like
think that's
4,000
everyone's
followers.
experience.
Yeah, yeah. He had like 4,000 followers at the time, and I thought like, wow, this guy's famous. That's so many people. And now he has like 70,000 or something insane like that.
Yeah.
But I just remember seeing him and being like, oh, hey, yeah, that's a dude who kind of looks like me and sort of like I would probably be friends with that guy if we met in real life. So I'm gonna follow him and see what he's up to. And yeah, just kind of went from there. And that's, that kind of gets the idea, like one of the cool things about tech compared to a lot of other industries is that like lots of different kinds of people are well represented here, at least relatively speaking. So like no matter what kind of person you are, you can find other people who share your interests in this realm. And so
That's a
that's
That's a great point. I remember when I first joined Tech Twitter back in February, I was still at the startup that I was at. So it was literally like a 5-person startup, and I was the only woman there. So I was like, I'm going to make my Twitter feed at least 50% women in tech because, like, I have no connections with them in real life. Like, I feel underrepresented in my actual company. So, like, how can I connect with those people who can relate to me online? So, it's kind of nice that you can like find people who look like you or have similar backgrounds to you and things like that online. Like that's one of the great things about social media.
Absolutely. Right on. I love that. Um, cool. Thanks for that question, Anne. And I think that is as good a place as any to wrap up for today. Katherine, once again, thank you so much for being here. This has really been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody be sure to follow Katherine on Twitter. That is at Katherine Codes, if you're not already. And excuse me. So that's it. That's the end of the boot camp. We made it to the end. Um, Thanks everybody so much for being here. This has been such a delight. This is honestly something I had been wanting to do since the day I signed up with Hashnode. And it has been, you all made my dreams come true. It's been so much fun. Really such a pleasure to connect with you all and talk about all this stuff. And I would love to do it again soon. So yeah, thank you so much. It's not. I've got some stuff to cover. This is not the very end, so don't leave just yet. We do have some housekeeping to cover. The writing prompt for this session, I know. So this session got rescheduled from last week. Things got kind of hairy with the schedule, but the writing prompt for this session, if you didn't get it last week, is what is a tech company that you would be excited to work for? Write an article that's relevant to what that company does. A good example for me personally, back in the spring, I was applying for jobs at Jamstack companies, Jamstack startups. And so I wrote a blog post called Clueless Newbie's Guide to Headless CMSs and the Jamstack. Because I knew that when I showed up for interviews with those companies, I would be able to present this blog post and that would be like, see, I know what I'm talking about. I know what this stuff is. So some things to consider along with this writing prompt. Does the company you're targeting, do they have a blog? If so, what kinds of content do they publish? Is their documentation lacking or outdated in some way? You could be the one to update it. You could also check out the website whopaystechnicalwriters.com to get some ideas for some real companies you could actually target. And I have written for a couple companies that are featured there, so it is totally within reach. And one of our bootcamp sponsors, Auth0, who's actually also featured on whopaystechnicalwriters.com, they have generously offered to send out some swag to anybody who chooses to write about their product. So if you write about Auth0 for any reason throughout this bootcamp, be sure to let me know, and I'll make sure those folks know, and they'll send you some swag. So we've been talking a lot about these writing prompts over the last couple of weeks, and I probably haven't done the best job of explaining why you should care about those. So beyond just because it's fun to write, we are giving out participation certificates to anybody who completes at least 4 out of the 6 writing prompts before Thursday, September 30th. So because this session got rescheduled, rather, we decided to extend the deadline just a little bit. So you have until this Thursday, September 30th, to complete at least 4 of the writing prompts. Of course, I, as your instructor, would love to see all 6 completed, but 4 will get you there. And to let me know, please just send me one email, no more than one. I will see it. My email is sam@hashnode.com. And just include links to all of your articles there. And be sure to use the subject line, Hashnode Writing Bootcamp Submissions. Make sure that's your email subject line so the message doesn't get buried in my inbox. And the first 100 people who submit their articles before the 30th will receive exclusive Hashnode t-shirts commemorating this event. And also, in addition to that, we would really love to know how you felt about this thing. What did you like? We want to know. I want to do this again, and I would love for the next one to be even cooler than this one. So I would love to get your feedback. And if you share your experiences and your thoughts about the bootcamp on Twitter using the hashtag Hashnode Bootcamp, We will randomly select 5 winners to score some free t-shirts also on the 30th. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been such a pleasure. Like I said, if you're not already blogging on Hashnode, I'm not sure what you're even doing here at this point, but please come join us. Yeah, and thank you all so much, especially to our sponsors, for Sell, Auth0, Take Shape, all 3 awesome companies. All 3 actively accept submissions from writers. So if you're ready to go to the next level and get paid for your work, you should absolutely contact all 3 of these companies, and I'm sure they would be happy to work with you. Um, so that's it. That's all I can possibly say. Thank you all so much. This has been a pleasure, and I will talk to you again soon. I've got Twitter Spaces on Wednesday, so come back for that. I'm going to be talking about open source Wednesday, the 29th. And all right, see you all later. Thanks. Bye.